Hey, this is Jamie with Stonemaier Games, and I am live, as you can tell, if you're watching this right now. I am not at Gencon. I am instead in St. Louis doing this livecast and hanging out here and working from St. Louis. We're not going to Gencon this year, although MeepleSource, if you are at Gencon or if you're going there, MeepleSource does have a booth that we are technically sharing with them. They're selling our products there. There's a whole volunteer team that's just doing amazing stuff for us, showing our games to people who go by the booth. So if you're at Gen Con, I hope you drop by that booth and see what's going on there. I'll post a reminder about this on Saturday on the Wingspan group, but Natalia, the artist of Wingspan, will actually be at Gen Con with some of her prints for the game, and Elizabeth will be there too. So if you bring your copy of Wingspan or you get a copy of Wingspan at Gen Con, you can have both the designer and the lead artist sign your game, which I think is pretty rare. It's I have a you can get your game signed by a designer often, but to get it signed also by the artist is pretty cool. Looks like some people have already joined us. That's awesome. Thank you for dropping by. Megan, Miles, Leo, Charles. Yeah, thanks for dropping by. Miles, I'm curious if you've played Edge of Darkness yet and what you thought of it. That's the new game that was shown at Gen Con a few years ago with the sleeved cards that you modify throughout the game. I've heard some really great things about it, but I haven't gotten to play it yet. I'm very curious about that one. At my game night this past week, I played, we kind of got divided up. I think we had, about 11 people, and I was in a group of 3, and we played Isle of Skye, For Sale, and Celestia, all of which I thought would work well with 3, but I was pleasantly surprised that all of them worked so well with 3. Particularly For Sale, I was the most worried about that one, but it actually worked really well. Isle of Skye flew by with 3 players, and Celestia also was a lot of fun with 3 players. So yeah, I had a good time at game night last week. Tonight, I have game night, of course. I don't know what I'm playing yet tonight, so we'll find out. I'll let you know next week what we play. Although next week will be a very busy week because there's a lot of stuff that we are announcing next week. We're announcing a new game, or I'm announcing a new game. And there are a number of other smaller announcements that I'll be making. I think a few that are related to the digital realm. It depends on what my digital partners say that I can say. But yeah, there should be some quite a bit that I'll be talking about next week. Miles says, is there a Gen Con release that I'm the most excited about? Whatever I'm excited about now, I'm sure it might change as I stay on top of Gen Con news and see what people are talking about, see what people are excited about. There was a game that I saw mentioned on Cardboard Republic about Pandasaurus. I'm excited about Machikoro Legacy, of course, but there is another game that they announced about. It's a cooperative game where you're putting blocks together in a certain way, but you can only see from a certain angle. Like you're only given, like the clue that you're given says it gives you a certain angle that you can work on, but you don't know what the other angles need to look like. I can't remember the name of it right now, but it looks really cool. I hadn't heard anything about it. I'm not even positive it's a Gen Con release because I couldn't find any other information about it. But that sounds really cool. I'm curious to check that out. Morgan says that they played Edge of Darkness this past Sunday and really liked it. That's great. And Leo says he got out his copy, was overwhelmed, and instead played A Feast for Odin, a game that is not at all overwhelming, unless you know how to play already. Darian is here. So I mentioned one of the volunteers that are helping to run the booth, and Darian has been really amazing at coordinating the volunteer effort this year. Darian, thank you so much for your work with coordinating the volunteers for Gen Con. That's really incredible, and I really appreciate it. Charles says, how has Meghan turned you into a world traveler so quickly? That's a good question, Charles. I honestly, like before I got involved with my company, I was very much a traveler. I don't know if I had a much more limited budget back then, and so I was limited by budget in terms of how often I could travel. But my goal coming out of college was that I wanted to go somewhere unique and beautiful and maybe exotic, maybe international, but not necessarily. Every year, at least once a year, have a special trip. And that goal kind of fell to the wayside after I started my company. A lot of stuff was kind of pushed to the side when I started my company. And it's been fun to revisit that and plan ahead for adventures to come and to brainstorm things that I hope will happen with traveling around the world with Meghan. So I don't know. It's just been it's been pretty exciting to venture out into that. Not that we've gone anywhere yet international, but we're talking about New Zealand. So that's the current place that we're brainstorming about. Chad says, what do I find is the most challenging part of designing a game with a 6-player count? I'd say downtime is the big one. You probably noticed that most of my games have turns that are very simple. Like you just do a thing and then you're done with your turn. And I think that's really crucial in a 6-player game. The other thing that I think is really crucial is that you're able to, for the most part, plan ahead for your turn in advance. So if there's a game with tons of player interaction, at least like a Euro style game, if there's a lot of player interaction, you can't plan it all in advance, then it gets to your turn, and that's when the downtime happens, because that could happen with every player's turn. Of course, there's a whole other subset of games, like party games, large group bluffing social games, where players are constantly involved all the time. The turns really don't even matter as much in games like that. So it all really comes down to downtime, I think. Let's see if I have any actual announcements this week for Stonemaier game stuff. I'm not at Gencon. That's kind of an announcement, but you probably already knew that if you're here. Now I don't. Yeah, I'll look ahead to see if I can hint at anything coming up for next week, because I do have a couple things. So I am planning on talking about the Kennerspiel in the e-newsletter, mentioning that Wingspan did win the Kennerspiel. There's a couple digital things. I will see if my partners say that it's good to go on me to talk about them, but there are some digital things that I'm really excited about. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if those are ready for next week's announcement. But the big announcement will be a big game, and I think I'm going to start to hint at it on Instagram with some sneaky photos. So this afternoon, I'm going to take some photos of this new game, and if you pay attention to Instagram, which is at Jamie Stegmaier on Instagram over the next few days, you might see some photos hinting at what that game is. Not giving it away, but hinting at what it is. Tim says, did I catch the Picard trailer? No, Tim, I totally forgot to catch it after last time. So I will, let me bring that up on YouTube right now. I won't watch it right now, but I will remember to do that. All right, Picard trailer. All right, it's up now. I won't forget it this time. Thanks, Tim, for the reminder. Darian says, do I want to shamelessly plug stopping by the MeepleSource booth if you're going to Gen Con? Yes, I did that, Darian. I think you came in a little bit after I did that, but I have shamelessly plugged it. I have no shame in that. I want people to stop by and see our games and meet volunteers like you who are showing them how to play our games. Ali says, I'm so curious about your thoughts on Trial by Trolley. We had an argument with my friends about its macabre aspect. So it's a famous philosophical question, the Trial by Trolley. And so for a couple of years now, I found out about this question maybe 3 or 4 years ago. There's a lecture series at Harvard, I believe, that's online, where there's a professor that talks about that kind of thing and has great discussions with the students. And so I found out about it, and I've kind of been fascinated by it. Whether or not it belongs as a game, I don't know. But if the game provokes interesting discussion, despite its macabre aspect, macabre, how do you say that word? Macabre. I'm interested in it. If it's just for comedic effect, like killing for comedic effect isn't, I don't find that funny. But if it provokes discussion, yeah, I'm all for it. I haven't backed it myself yet, but I am a little curious about it. It looked like they had done some interesting things with the game design, but partially at least for comedic effect. So I don't know. I'm a little on the fence there to use that. Use death for comedy in that way, but I lean towards the side of that it could provoke some interesting discussions. Lisa says Mental Blocks. Mental Blocks is the game by Pandasaurus that I'm particularly intrigued in, that I just found out about the other day. So if anyone picks that up at Gen Con, I'd love to know your thoughts on it. Arthur says, hope all is well. Do you know any conventions, events related to board games that take place in France? Looking forward to testing my game there. I don't know offhand, but I'm sure there are plenty. There's a great gaming community in France. What is our French partner Madigo definitely attends some big ones in France, but I'm not thinking of them offhand. I think there is actually a what is it, Cons? Is that how you say it? Cannes. I think there's a big game festival there, but I don't know when it is. George says, fresh new haircut. Yeah, I gave myself a little trim yesterday. Martin says, any news on the Breath of the Wild inspired game? I don't have any news on that right now, Martin, but I appreciate you asking about that. That is a game that I'm very, very excited about. Josh says, I know you're excited about Machi Koro Legacy. What do I think about Simon's Foodies? Actually, I don't think I've heard anything about Foodies. I'll have to look that up. I think that's the first time I've heard of Foodies. I'm aware of Simon's Truvang Legends, or the game that they have on Kickstarter right now, which is Legacy-esque. It's a campaign game. There's the game remembers things, but it doesn't. You aren't making permanent changes. So, but Foodies, I don't know anything about. Tell me about Foodies. What's up with Foodies? Let's see if I have any topics I wanted to cover. I guess just real quick, I see some questions, but this past weekend, I had a fun weekend, a really fun weekend with Meghan, where we went on a great hike on Sunday. I'll do it backwards. We went on a hike on Sunday. I got to meet my favorite bird ever, the Peregrine Falcon. There was one hanging out with some volunteers at this hiking area in St. Louis, or right outside St. Louis. So we had a great hike there, and it was I wasn't expecting to see a Peregrine Falcon there at all, so it was a big surprise. We had some nice boozy slushies at a place called Narwhal here in St. Louis on Saturday, and we went rock climbing on Saturday as well. That was a lot of fun, and we did a Magic draft. The new Magic core set. We did a draft of that, and we also finished watching Stranger Things season 3, which I really liked. I definitely liked it more than season 2. Season 2 was a little down for me, but I don't think they've quite lived up to season 1 yet. But the quality, like the production quality of season 3 was off the charts. It was really, really good. I'm impressed by what Netflix is putting into that show, and I'll definitely continue to watch it. Charles says, if Hollywood was making a movie about my life, who would you want playing you? Who would voice Biddy and Walter? Who would voice Biddy and Walter? Who would voice Biddy and Walter? I'd love to get Will Ferrell's voice in there somewhere. So maybe Will Ferrell for one of them. I don't know which one. Probably Walter. And Biddy would have I would say like a very smart sounding accent, like maybe a British accent, like a high English British accent. Who would I want to play me? One of my favorite actors is Daniel Day-Lewis, who I think can play anyone. I think he's retired from acting, but he would be my pick. I think if someone needed to play me, it would be awesome to watch Daniel Day-Lewis play me, even just to imitate me would be incredible. Eric says, all of your ambassadors will miss seeing you at Gencon this year. And I'll miss seeing you too, Eric, and everybody else who's helping out at Gencon, or just attending Gencon. Chad says, how cool is it to finally meet a Peregrine Falcon? Yeah, it was incredible. I would have loved to see it in flight. I probably have seen a Peregrine Falcon in flight and didn't know it. But to see one up close, like I was 2 feet away from this bird that I've been fascinated by my entire life, and it was incredible. I mean, it did this little thing where it puffed up its feathers, and we were told that meant that it was content, that it was happy, which was really nice, especially on such a hot day. I was a little worried about the birds on this hot day. There was also a bald eagle that we got to see. A volunteer was holding the bald eagle, and eventually it did get hot enough that the bald eagle took a little bit of a bath, which was neat to see as well. Pete says, who made my game table? That is actually, I don't know if I mentioned this. It's a board game tables. That's the Jasper. A friend of mine works for BoardGameTables.com. So this is the second table that I've had from Board Game Tables. The first one was the Duchess, and then a friend got that one, and now I have the Jasper, which is very similar, except the cup holders. Let's see if you can see it. Can you see the cup holders over there? Cup holders are kind of they're on the outside of the table, and they come off the table, and it has 3 toppers, a 3-part topper, which makes it a lot easier for one person to take off the topper by themselves. Actually, before I forget, for those of you, it's fine if you just drop in today, but this usually goes for an hour, and I think my business partner, who you very rarely see, is dropping by in an hour for me to sign some papers. And so you might get to see the elusive Alan Stone if you stick around until around 11 o'clock. Or you can check back on YouTube later or on Facebook. The Facebook saves this video, so you can see if he stops by at the end. He doesn't usually like getting on camera, but he might pop on here for a minute. I did get to see him last night. We had kind of a triple date with he and his wife, me and Megan, and our Italian partners from Genos, Anna and Alfredo. They stopped by St. Louis on their way to Gencon, and we had a wonderful meal at a place called Peacemaker here in St. Louis, where I had a really delicious, in fact, we all ordered the exact same thing. We all got a Connecticut-style lobster roll and chips. The chips of this place are actually really, really good. It's not like a throwaway dish. So really, really good chips with this really nice spice on them. But the lobster rolls were absolutely amazing. So delicious. Let's see. Vladimir says, any Gencon surprises? The only surprise for me so far, because it hasn't really started, was this Mental Blocks game from Pandasaurus that I had heard nothing about, that I'm very curious about now. Lisa was mentioning it earlier in the comments if you scroll up. Kent says, have I tried the Magic the Gathering Arena for PC? You know, Kent, I haven't tried it. I used to play Magic online whenever a new set would come out. But ever since I started doing the thing where I host a draft when there's a new set, like I did this past Saturday, that has satisfied my Magic curiosity. Because really, I just want to play a set, have fun with it. I love drafting, but also learn from the mechanisms and the inspirations for that current set. And so going through a 4-hour draft where I draft and we do round robin, you get to play everybody who drafted, that completely satisfies my need to play Magic. So I haven't played online in quite some time. Arthur says, do the artists of our games actually play your games? I wonder what the artist of Psy thought about the materialization of his universe. Same about Wingspan and others. I think for the most part they do. I think Jakob has tried to play. I don't know if he's played with friends. I know Natalia has definitely tried to play. She's the lead artist for Wingspan. Beth Sobel, I think, has turned into a gamer because she did like Viticulture Between Two Cities. She turned into a gamer, I think, because of some of those games. I think Beth can correct me if you're watching this. Beth, feel free to correct me, but I'm pretty sure that's true. And what else? Some of the other games. Jackie Davis, I think, is a gamer. She did Euphoria. And the artist for Between Two Castles, I'm not sure about. The artist for My Little Scythe, Katie Cow, she is definitely a gamer and a game designer. So she's fully immersed in the gaming world. So yeah, I think a lot of them are at least curious about the game industry. And the artist for the game that I'm announcing next week is definitely a gamer, very much so a gamer. George asked about the chocolate of the week. I totally forgot about the chocolate of the week. What are we doing for the chocolate of the week? I know I'm eating chocolate today. It always happens. Okay, I'll do. Actually, it was chocolate of yesterday because I did finish it off. But I had these little bonbons from Trader Joe's, from my Trader Joe's visit from like a month ago. A few of these little chocolate bonbons left, and I had 2 as a treat after lunch yesterday. Oh, and I did actually after dinner. We shared 2 pies after dinner at Peacemaker yesterday, and one of them was called a Derby pie, and it was kind of this like molten chocolate and maybe caramel and peanuts, and it was just gooey deliciousness. So I'll say that's maybe one of my chocolates of the week as well. Before I get to other questions, let me see if I have anything else that I need to cover. Did that. My video the video yesterday was about Labyrinth, which I think I mentioned a few weeks ago. I played that in Kansas City. Childhood favorite, really holds up, really great game. And then on Sunday, my Sunday sit-down video was about games with event cards. I talked at the end of the video about this style of event card that I really don't enjoy as much, where something just happens to you and you deal with it randomly. Like that's my least favorite style. But there are a lot of other styles of event cards where they're like organically integrated into the game, where they offer interesting choices, where you can even decide whether or not to take an event card at all. That was a fun video to make. I've been thinking a lot about event cards because I do like the narrative and the theme that they add to games. So I'm curious if you have or haven't watched that video, if you have a game that uses event cards in a way that you really, really enjoy, where you're always kind of excited to draw that event card to see what happens and see how you get to interact with it. Ernani, oh, Walter's whining at me back here. It's okay, bud. Ernani says, have you watched Netflix's Dark? I'm sure you would love it. It's about time travel and kind of like a more serious Stranger Things. I like a lot of what you just said there, and I've heard good things. It's definitely on my list on Netflix. My only concern is that I do like that Stranger Things breaks the tension with some humor. And so I like the mix of humor and the sci-fi, in Stranger Things. So, but I do love time travel. So that might be a good reason for me to venture into dark. I'll see. Oh, and actually, speaking of fiction that I'm interested in or that I love, Red Rising is a series that I've talked about a lot. It's a series of novels that I absolutely love. And the new book released yesterday. I am unfortunately in the middle of another book that I'm really enjoying, so I need to wait till I finish that book. I think it's called Jade War. It's the second in a series that I'm reading. But I'm super, super excited to read this Red Rising book. If you haven't read Red Rising, I highly recommend it. And there's a trilogy, and then this is the second trilogy that I'm reading in that world right now. The second book in the second trilogy. Chad says Danny DeVito for Walter. I can see that. Rob says several years ago we had a Peregrine Falcon spend a part of our fall and winter hanging out on a tree just behind your work office. That's really, really cool. Vladimir suggests try Guatemalan dark chocolate. I do love dark chocolate. I'll have to look at maybe Whole Foods to see if they have Guatemalan dark chocolate. I don't know if I've seen specifically that version of it. Ernani says, sorry if I've said anything. Any news on Codename Clay? I did not reveal anything about Codename Clay today, but I did say that I am going to take some sneaky photos of the game and post them on Instagram over the next few days. Maybe not every day, but maybe every other day, to kind of hint at what the game is, what I'll be talking about. Just real subtle hints. I don't think they'll give anything away at all, but might give you some ideas. Charles says, what color does Meghan play with? Meghan plays with green. What would happen if she also played red? That would be the end of our relationship. Yeah, pretty much immediately, because I have to play red. So I'm kidding. I've played other colors. After you play a color for so long, though, it is hard to play other colors if that color is at the table. So it's still my instinct to move the red token, even if red isn't available. John says, how much did I pay Jakob for all the artwork? I appreciate the question, but that is a private agreement between me and a partner. So I can't reveal that. I will say that he is very well compensated on an ongoing basis for his artwork for Scythe. Jacob says, when it comes to storytelling in board games, what are my favorite aspects? So I think I talked about event cards a little bit. I do like event cards and what they bring to the story, especially the event cards that I mentioned in my top 10 list this past Sunday. But my favorite style of storytelling in games is that type of storytelling that emerges from the gameplay and the mechanisms itself. Let me think of an example of this. So an example would be Scotland Yard. In Scotland Yard, there's no narrative, there's no text that you're reading, there's no event cards or anything like that. The story emerges from what you were actually doing in the game, and I think it really helps that in Scotland Yard, the theme and the mechanisms match so well. It's on a map. You can say I'm moving from this place to another. You feel like you're moving there. When you travel on a bus, you move further than when you travel on a taxi. So it feels a little bit like you're moving on a bus versus a taxi versus the train. And the story that emerges from where you're moving, when you're seeing Mr. X, when you're not seeing him or her. I love that style of emergent storytelling in games. Gerald says, will your new game ship to homes in August or September? I haven't revealed that yet, but you can probably tell that our pattern of announcing and releasing games is that I start to talk about it on a certain day, and then I share information about it for a few weeks, and then a few weeks later, we do the pre-order for it. And when we do the pre-order, we start shipping almost immediately to customers who pre-order the game. So that's our typical mode of operating. So I think you could probably anticipate something similar like that for the upcoming announcement. So Lisa said, so similar to me, it sounds like Lisa was in the middle of a novel, but she abandoned that book to read Dark Age, the new Red Rising book. I'm tempted to do that, Lisa. I may need to do it, but I really am enjoying Jade War. Jade War is really, really good. So I want to see what happens there too. Imagine All the Meeple says, are there any games from overseas that I would really like to see translated and re-released? They just stumbled upon an Italian game called Brutti and can't wait for the English version. It does happen from time to time that I hear about a language-dependent international game, non-US game that hasn't been brought here. But there are some other companies, or a number of other companies that are really good at getting those games and identifying them, learning about them pretty early, getting arrangements. That it hasn't been something that I've done yet. I'm sure that it is possible in the future. If I hear about something really, really cool that I think needs a localization, and that I think could be very successful, I might consider it. I think I might just try to buy the full rights for the game if I do that, because we have worldwide distribution. We don't just distribute in the US, and we have worldwide localization partners. So I'd rather just own the entire rights to the game at that point. Russell says, have I been approached for IP-based games? He says, I really need a great Stranger Things game. I have my own ideas, but never plan on that happening. I think there is a game, I think it's called might be called The Upside Down or something like that, The In-Between or something like that. Came out a year ago that I think was very much inspired by Stranger Things without the IP. So you might check that out. Have I been approached for IP-based games? I think it goes both ways. Sometimes the publisher approaches the holder of the IP and tries to get it. That's what I've tried to do with Red Rising. And then the other way sometimes happens where a company might approach a designer, sometimes a publisher. Has that happened to me? Yeah, there are a few. There was a novelist that approached me at one point. There was a company that had a bunch of IPs, like too many. There was another publisher that had a bunch of IPs and like too many for them to even handle. So they wanted to talk to me as a co-publisher for them. So it's happened a few times. But for me to publish a game, I need to, really love the game. And also for an IP game, I also need to really love the IP because of what I and we as a company put into the game. So while there are many IPs I love, there are many IPs that I like. There are only a few IPs that I really love enough to put that time and energy into it and to be willing to pay a royalty for it. Arthur says, do I speak alone, Jamie? I don't know why, but you seem like that kind of person. Do I speak alone? I'm going to have to clarify that. I'm not. Do you mean do I talk to myself? I would say that I talk to my cats quite a bit. Every now and then I'll process something out loud, but I would say it's pretty rare. I'm much more of an internal thinker, and if I really need to process something, I write it down. I think I process things much better in writing than out loud. Rob says, do I ever think it will be cost-effective to have games 100% manufactured in the US? That's a good question, Rob. I have my doubts. I think China has such a heads up on us there that it will be tough to do. Tough to create all these components that require a very specific machinery and labor that is devoted towards the smallest of details at a mass scale. I think that will be very difficult, but we'll see. Meghan mentioned to me just yesterday that Brazil might be up and coming as a manufacturer. I can definitely see that. Maybe that'll happen. Maybe other countries will start to be as good at manufacturing as China, but I think China has a huge head start there. Eric says, what kind of games does Meghan enjoy? And since beginning, well, let me answer that first, then I'll see what the other side is. So Meghan is a gamer. She's a very talented gamer, really. She did the Magic Draft the other day. She seems to enjoy a vast variety of games. I think there are only a few games that I've seen Meghan truly not enjoy. And they typically seem to fall within the trading auction category. That itself is even a little bit of a generalization. Meghan can feel free to correct me on that. But she's, from what I can mostly tell, an ambi gamer, loves to play most games, loves the social aspect of them. The second part of your question is, since beginning your relationship, have you become more interested in two-player games? I've been interested in two-player games for a while. There, you can actually see my little section of the shelf back there that has all the two-player games. But it is exciting to have a more consistent two-player gaming partner for those types of games, because I really do like playing two-player games. I like playing games with Meghan. So yeah, I'm excited to explore other two-player games. I want to play Raptor. Yeah, I would say Raptors probably at the top of the 2-player list right now for games that I'd like to play with Meghan that I don't yet own. But I think there are a few back there that I own that we haven't played. I don't think we played Seven Wonders Duel. We haven't played Jolly and Roger. We haven't played Cosmic Run. Yeah, I think we've just played. Oh, we haven't played Dice Thrones. Yeah, there are really quite a few that we need to play that I own before we venture into other games. Brian says, In Between is the name of the game that has kind of the Stranger Things theme without the Stranger Things IP. Oh, and Lisa mentioned an RPG called Kids on Bikes that was also inspired by Stranger Things. Yeah. Gerald says that Zlatan Ibrahimovic criticized the Super Bowl kind of structure of Major League Soccer. Apparently, you can finish 7th and become champions. He says it lowers performance in league games. How would I like to see the structure changed? So I guess this is compared to what the European style is, where you accumulate points over the course of the season, and there is no tournament at the end of the season. There's just a winner. What I'd be very curious to see is that something that the NBA is actually considering, which is a mid-season tournament. So basically, I'd like to see the European system where the winner at the end of the season. Actually, I don't even know. I'll say this. I don't even know if this is actually what I really feel, but I'm intrigued by this system. End of the season, top of the table, you win. But have a tournament in the middle of the season that gives teams basically the opportunity to play more games and therefore accumulate more points if they advance in the tournament. So if you so it's possible that if you are the leading team in the league going into the midseason tournament, but you lose your first game, you're out of the tournament. So you don't get to continue accumulating those other points that you might get during the season. So it gives those lower ranked teams a chance to catch up and be competitive. It also actually gives those dominant teams the chance to be even more dominant. So maybe that wouldn't work, but I'm intrigued by that. The NBA is considering a structure where they have like a March Madness style tournament in the middle of the season, and then also their regular finals championship at the end of the season. Because I do like the climactic game at the end of the season. Super Bowl is a lot of fun to watch. It's a cultural event. I don't know if MLS has that level of cultural event or I know it doesn't have that level of cultural event feel that the Super Bowl does yet. But I wonder if there is a hybrid between the two. That maybe you do the table style, you have a mid-season tournament doing kind of similar to what I suggested, and then maybe at the end of the season, the top two teams of that table, or maybe top 4, kind of like in college football in the U.S., maybe top 4 have a little mini tournament, so that gives a lot more meaning to what you've done during the season. I don't know, just throwing out some ideas there. I'm flexible. I like sports regardless. It doesn't matter that much to me. John says, with regards to manufacturing, how about Vietnam? I have heard that Vietnam has really upped their game in even board gaming. You mentioned some other companies, but even board game manufacturing is happening a lot more there. We were approached by a company that was anticipating the tariffs to happen between the U.S. and China, and they have a system where they will do a lot of that work in Vietnam to kind of bypass the tariffs, which I thought was pretty clever. Jacob says, do I have an urge to write any more books? Yeah, Jacob, so you might know that I wrote a novel years ago now, probably about 7 years ago. And most of my creative power goes into board games. So I think if I ever lost the passion for designing board games, that creative energy would need to go somewhere, and it might go back into writing books, or at least visiting that novel. Because I thought my novel was actually pretty good. It definitely needed some work, probably a full rewrite, but I thought it was pretty solid. So I wouldn't mind even just revisiting that someday. Celine says, what kind of genre of music do I listen to? Well, I rarely listen to music when I work. I would say almost not at all. Every once in a while when I'm working on like my open world exploration game, I'll turn on some Breath of the Wild music to listen to. So no words, just kind of classical feel. But that's even pretty rare. But when I beyond that, I listen to a pretty broad range of music. There's pop, like I like catchy pop songs. I like upbeat songs. I like, what would you call it? Kind of alternative folk music, One of my favorite bands is a band called Typhoon. I don't know exactly how to classify their music. I'm looking over here at my other screen to see what I have up on here. But yeah, I like Typhoon. I really, really love. I love a band called The Generationals, Snow Patrol. I'm just scrolling down to see like what bands I have multiple songs from. Yeah, a lot of Typhoon over here. The Head in the Heart, Frightened Rabbit. Really like Frightened Rabbit. So a lot of these I think are, let's see how iTunes classifies them. Alternative. They classify it as alternative. But I also really like pop. Taylor Swift. I gotta love Taylor Swift. Ed Sheeran. Yeah, a pretty broad range. But I also love recommendations. If there's a song that you love, Celine, or anyone who's listening here that you really love, that you really recommend, I love specific song recommendations because I can go on iTunes and listen to it and see if it's for me. So if there's a song that you think is catchy, I think one pattern of music that I found that I really like are songs that build. So songs that maybe start a little bit slow and then they build and build and build. Florence and the Machine, I think, does this really, really well. Those songs, for some reason, really appeal to me. Rob says, have there been any thoughts or plans or dreams about having some novels set in my game worlds? Yeah, a little bit. Like when Euphoria was really big after the Kickstarter, there were some people who wrote short stories about it. I think someone attempted a novel. For Scythe, or the Jakob's 1920 plus world, I think he did commission a big book of short stories in that world that I think unfortunately is still only available in Polish. But yeah, it would be pretty cool. I'm trying to think if I have any upcoming games. I'm focusing more and more on world building in our games, so I think there could be novels set in those worlds. So we'll see. Yeah, I think that would be really cool. Charles says, what's my favorite ethnic cuisine? Probably Japanese, but I do really like Cajun food. I don't know if that counts as an ethnic cuisine, but I love Cajun food, as I think, Charles, you know, down in New Orleans. I really love Cajun style food. And so Japanese, Cajun, I would probably put those two at the top. I do get cravings for Mexican food and definitely cravings for pizza. So those are two, I don't know if I eat those foods all that often because they're not the healthiest, but I do get cravings for them from time to time. Arthur says, since we started talking about soccer, as a game designer, what would I change about it? He says, I think only 3 substitutions is lame, leads to injuries and less strategy. Also, maybe lowering the number of players. 11 seems too much. I agree that there's something weird about substitutions that happens, especially the way they're used at a competitive level. They're almost used to like stall the game. I'd rather see a high level of play throughout the game with really fresh-legged players. When I played soccer growing up, there weren't restrictions like that. We could sub in and out as much as we wanted. Maybe it was too much to sub in and out. I see the reasons for there being limitations on that. The number one thing I change, though, is offsides. I appreciate like the spirit of offsides has changed so much from like, or the way they implement it, the way they enforce offsides is just so different than the spirit of it. The spirit of offsides, in my opinion, is that a player can't just hang out by the goal while all the other players are on the other side of the field. Because what ends up happening if they do that is what would happen is that a defender would feel the need to go guard that player. And so you're taking a defender out of the game by having a player do that. But the way offsides works now is if you're like even just a fraction, like a toe offsides, then it's offsides. And they've gotten really good at enforcing that because of all the technology that they have in soccer now. And there's no advantage in that. If you're offsides by a toe near the halfway line of the field, so what? I mean, I don't think that's worth stopping the game to figure out. And so I would love for offsides to be changed to like you have to be a full body length offsides, and where it only matters in a certain part of the field. Like maybe not start at the halfway mark, maybe divide the field into thirds or something like that, and only have it matter in the final third of the field. Yeah, something about that it has started to bother me a little bit. Brian says, since I have the Jasper of the table behind me, how much of an improvement is it over just a regular dining room table? Do I ever leave games set up under the top when, say, having dinner? I don't eat dinner on that table. I see what you're saying. I think it definitely could be used as a dining room table. I don't eat dinner there, but I will say it has been super helpful to leave games set up under the table. We played The Rise of Queensdale there for months last year, and it was really nice to not have to clean that game up. I think the game would be, as much as I love the game, it would be almost unplayable, I think, if you had to clean it up every time you play. So having a game topper like that has been really helpful for those campaign and legacy style games. Walter is really whining here, so I'm going to open up his food real quick. I'll be right back. I'm just going to open Walter's food. Okay, bud. There we go. Sorry about that. Drew says he's excited to be a first-time attendee at my game design day in September. Would love to hear my thoughts about that day. Drew, so hopefully you've been getting the updates about it. The whole purpose of the day is for people to come and play test games, whether they're their games or someone else's games. And it's a lot of playing games all day long and meeting different people. It's a very structured day. Yeah, I don't know if I have much more to share about that than what you've probably seen in the emails already. But if you have any specific questions, let me know. I guess it's coming up pretty soon, isn't it? That's end of September. Late September. Vito says, have I ever heard of William Elliott Whitmore? I have not. I've not heard of that person. Jacob says, what job did I have before you made viticulture and started my company? I have two kind of answers here. I had two jobs after college. I had one as a project manager at a medical textbook publishing company, and then I had a job as a director of operations at a facility at a university here in St. Louis. And while I still had that job, I started Stonemaier Games. I did not leave that job until we had pretty much successfully delivered Euphoria to backers and knew that there was a nice buffer left over after that for me to survive on while I did the next thing, which was Tuscany, which did very well on Kickstarter. So there was a little bit of overlap there between the last job and when I went full-time at Stonemaier. But I've now been full-time at Stonemaier, coming up on 6 years now. Full-time 6 years. Chad says, how do I cut my own hair and not end up with a reverse mohawk? Very carefully, very, very carefully. And with my barber on speed dial in case I mess up. I'm getting some good song recommendations here and band recommendations, so thank you for those. I'll check them out when I get off the video here. I've heard of a few of these. I've heard of Avett Brothers. I definitely have some of their songs. Pete Yorn, I'm familiar with. Civil Wars, I'm familiar with. Barton Hollow, yeah, I'm familiar with that song. I really do like their style of music. I'll have to go back over these recommendations after the video because I'm gonna. Well, maybe I'll start to write them down. Some of them I recognize, others I do not. Sound of Silence by Disturbed. And what was that other one? Sigala, Just Got Paid. I haven't heard of those. Nick says, am I excited for Clank Legacy? I am. I love Clank in any form. Well, I like normal Clank more than Space Clank in Space, but I am really excited about Clank Legacy. I need to go close the food now because Walter or Biddy's gonna. You could probably just saw him in the background. Biddy's gonna eat it. Walter's being a fussy boy, so he's gonna get some camera time. Here's Walter. Yeah, I'm excited for Clank Legacy. Okay, Vito mentioned some songs. William Elliott Whitmore, Hell or High Water. Okay. Hell or High Water from Whitmore. And Celine has a link here to a song called Melancholy. Oh, a chill mix. Looks like a whole big mix. Cool. Thank you, Celine. Chris says, how are there no Gen Con comments? Yeah, there are a few. There were a few earlier. I think people by now know that I'm not at Gen Con. Can probably tell that I'm not there. Let's see. Kenny says, any idea when My Little Scythe will see some add-on love? I do have an idea of when that will happen. I will say that it's in the works, that we're working on it. Yeah. Looks like I reached the end of the questions. Let me see if I have any other topics. I did a blog entry the other day that actually people seem to be pretty intrigued by it, about the cost of doing business. Yeah, about the idea of, like, it was centered around the idea that sometimes people place an order on our web store and they don't put their address in correctly. And so we end up sending the game or the product, whatever they buy, to the wrong address. And the customer contacts me about that, and how my approach to that has evolved over time. Like, how do I respond to that? What do I actually do? And my current approach has come to me through this idea of there's just a cost of doing business, that there's a cost, kind of a buffer involved in anything we do where mistakes are going to happen. And I'd rather go into those ventures or those shipments knowing that there's going to be a mistake that costs more than what we're currently sending. So the example I put in the post is, if we're sending out 100 games to people, that we really need to have 101 games available and the budget for 101 games, because out of those 100 games, one of them, a mistake's going to happen, whether it's a damaged copy, whether it's our fault or just the courier's fault, or if the customer messes up and they send it to the wrong address, they send it to an unsecure address. So having that philosophy has just made me a lot more, I think it's made me better at customer service, because I'm quicker just saying, yeah, we'll send you another one and we'll make it right. We'll send it to the right address, even though we're losing the cost of a game and potentially the cost of shipping if the customer decides not to pay for it. So, but I think that approach has really helped. It's kind of freed me a little bit to be better at customer service. So that was an interesting post to write and to see what people said in the comments. And then I had a post that I had a lot of fun writing the previous week about working while traveling, because I made a trip to Kansas City with Meghan recently, and I'm trying to discover, like, how can I run my company while I am not in my office? Because for the past 7 years, I've spent pretty much every day in the office running my company rather than trying to do that elsewhere. And so I'm trying to explore those options, what I can do in the office, or what I can do out of the office, and what I can't do, and how can I approach that. Yes, those were some fun blog posts to write this past week. Not sure what I'll write about tomorrow. Let's see. Tomorrow, I might write about what it's like to not attend Gen Con, but I might wait until next week to do that. I actually don't have a lot to talk about tomorrow. If you guys have any topics that you want me to cover on my crowdfunding entrepreneurship blog, let me know, and maybe I'll talk about it on tomorrow's blog entry. Yeah. John says, did I ever approach Toys R Us to distribute my games? So Toys R Us is a retailer, so they don't distribute. They just sell games to consumers. But no, I have not approached Toys R Us to sell our games. That's something that distributors would do. So we sell games to distributors, and those distributors sell to different retailers. Tom says, we're doing a Spiel des Jahres night at the brewery tonight. Wingspan will be the centerpiece. That's pretty cool, Tom. Do I have a favorite style of beer? I found that I really enjoy porters. So if you want to toast Wingspan with a porter. Sounds like I hear a door opening up here. You are going to get a little treat here. The elusive Alan is going to possibly make an appearance on camera if he wants to.
It's a treat, huh?
Yeah. So,
hi, everybody.
This is Alan. If you have any questions for him over the next few minutes, I can relay them over to him.
Yeah. I'll put these over here.
We're here, see if you can pull up a chair. My desk, my sit-stand desk, still has not been fixed yet. This has been broken. I don't know if you noticed, but it's been broken for like 2 months.
It's not standing.
It's not standing, no. But IKEA has finally sent me, they've claimed to have sent me the part that I need. Yeah.
So, yeah, hopefully you have tracking on that.
I do not.
No.
Yeah,
It's on its way.
It's just
in the mail.
maybe on its way, yeah.
Good.
Ian says, late to the party, was there any news on the new game? No, Ian, I've said we're going to do the announcement next Wednesday, and I'll be hinting at it on Instagram this week. Let's see if there's any questions for Alan while I'm here, or while he's here. Nick says, can we ever expect to see Wingspan on the shelves at Target? It's possible.
We hope.
We hope. Yeah, that would be cool.
Nice.
That'd be great. Yeah. Morgan says, Alan is real. Everybody says, hi, Alan. Okay, Charles says, what is Alan's favorite Stonemaier game?
I still love viticulture. I'm very, very proud of that. But yeah, Wingspan has kind of taken over as the one that I play the most at my game night. So
Wingspan is, I think it's helped that we've gotten better at developing games so that they're easy to teach. It's just really easy to teach.
yeah,
So I think we've kind of learned that over the years with various games.
yeah, definitely. You can sit down with anybody and start playing, and everybody has a good time usually.
Yeah, even the teacher.
Even the teacher, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not something where you're getting bogged down, or in my case, I have really good friends that make fun of me the whole time I teach a game, and which is infuriating. But they
Yeah.
can't really do that with Wingspan because it's too easy to teach.
Right. Let's see. Tom says, what's on the docket this afternoon? Game test, business meeting. Yeah, normally we meet in the afternoon, but we had a nice dinner with our Italian partners last night, so we were calling that our meeting for the week. And so Alan's just here for us to kind of sign some papers today. So nothing really big this week, but maybe next week we'll be so busy. We'll see. Next week might be testing a game submission. Yeah.
Hope so.
Leo says, Alan, pretend it's next week. Tell us some news. Alan, he's not the news guy. I'm the news guy. You got to go to me to get the news.
I don't know anything.
Chad says, have I decided to increase the print count on this new clay game because that's the code name of the game that we're releasing next week,
right.
Because of the popularity and under forecasting of Wingspan. It certainly did. My experience with Wingspan did factor into how I demand forecasted for that new game, but Wingspan's very recent success has not contributed to it because this is a game that's been in the works for it started production back in March, I think. So
right.
We have to think so far ahead for these releases. Okay, this is interesting. You can answer this. This is from Jeff. Jeff says, what's the biggest difference in design philosophy between the two of us?
Oh wow, can I answer that?
And you could answer it also as from a gaming perspective, what do you like in games that maybe I don't enjoy as much?
I don't know. I know I'm more accepting of things like phases. I'll bring a prototype to Jamie that somebody has submitted, and it'll be 4 or 5 phases, and I'm like, surely we can get past this. And Jamie's like, no, that's no good for me. So that is one thing where I don't mind as much, but I understand Jamie's point on it. So
yeah, I would say that's a big one. Yeah,
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. Gerald has kind of a related question. He says, Alan, did you ever insist that Jamie change a rule to make a game better? I'm sure you have.
I can't think of a rule, but I can think of a title. Euphoria, we went around and around on, and I kept coming back. We didn't have Euphoria. We had, what was it going to be called?
Dystopia,
right?
It was called Dystopia.
I kept saying, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it. And then finally, one of us came up with Euphoria, and we both agreed that was kind of perfect.
Yeah. Did you come up with a subtitle too? Because that I think really helps.
Maybe. I think you came up with the subtitle.
Okay.
Build a Better Dystopia. I think that's what made the compromise work.
Yeah.
You still got
I still got
Dystopia.
Dystopia. Yeah.
And which was important because it's a dystopian game, but Dystopia just felt like not quite right. And so we definitely, that's the biggest kind of argument I can remember. And I wouldn't even call it an argument, but I try not to have a lot of ego because I think Jamie's brilliant. And so my job is to kind of push back on things that I don't think are great, but Jamie's made a lot of decisions that I didn't agree with that have turned out great. So it's hard for me to be too pushy with that sort of thing.
Gerald, you use the word insist. I wouldn't say insist is something that you do often.
I never insist.
More often it's we play test a lot, and I know Alan, I know him pretty well at this point, what he likes and dislikes. And so as we're playing a game, he doesn't need to insist that something needs to change because I can see how he's interacting with it.
Right.
I can kind of tell, okay, this needs to change.
Yeah.
There is one flip side. There was a game that I wasn't excited about that Alan was really excited about for various reasons. And he kind of pushed that I should give this game a second chance. And I'm glad I did. We haven't released this game yet. It's one that we're working on still. But, and I think we're all still curious about how it will do. But I am glad that you pushed a little bit on that one. Yeah. Let's see. Gary says that he played Wingspan last night, and a sister who wears glasses loved the game but wished the text was bigger.
My wife said the same thing last night.
Just last night, yeah. Although I think she was specifically referring to the flavor text, which you don't have to read, but it is smaller.
Yeah, but it's there. You feel bad if you miss it.
Right, that's true. So, Chad says to Alan, how difficult is it to be the first to field new game submissions? What are bad things you find that immediately turn you off?
Well, anytime somebody says, picture checkers with whatever, or that immediately shuts it down. We have a filtering system that the point is to answer yes to all the questions. And if you answer yes to all the questions, then you should submit your game. Well, many people answer no to several of the questions and still submit their game, and that is an automatic no. But overall, it's really fun to be able to see people's ideas and go through them. The challenge for me is thinking from Jamie's perspective and making sure that it's hitting all the notes that we want it to hit. And I was just thinking on the way over here, I really wish I just had a way of knowing if a game was fun before we played it, but I think that's kind of the point. I mean, there are published games that we're like, oh, we want to play that, and then we play it, and it's not fun to us. And so there's no way to do that. But yeah, I'd say that's the biggest challenge, and the most fun is just getting to play all these new games and ideas, and see, even if it's a bad game, sometimes it has a really clever mechanic. So.
Yeah, it's tough to filter. There isn't a question in that filter that's like, is your game fun? Because people are always going to answer yes.
Right.
But we do have a question like we ask, have you blind play tested it?
Right.
And part of the reason we ask that is because you might have a game that you think is fun, but if you even just play test it with other people,
right,
and blind play test it, you can get that more objective feedback, unbiased feedback right away.
Well, and that also is key. Like, we've had games that have rules that are written so poorly you can't play the game.
Yeah.
And then maybe a month ago we had a game that was the best written rules that we've experienced. Like, it was just so clear going through. They clearly had blind play tested. When you're the designer and you write out the rules, no one could possibly know. Like, you think you've got it all out there, but no one. Somebody has to play it before you can see where the holes are. And some people don't get that blind play testing done. They still answer yes,
right.
Which is, as soon as we read the rules and find out we can't play it, that's not going to get you anywhere. So we're never in a hurry to get a game. If there's a good product, we'll let you take your time, get it developed, get the blind play testing in. Don't feel like you've got to get it onto our site in a hurry.
Yeah.
Take your time and do everything right. If we're talking to designers here, and then you got a much better shot.
I would say that's very important, because usually in almost every circumstance, you're only going to get the one shot. We're not letting someone submit a game to us and then we give them much feedback and they submit it again and again and again.
Right.
That we can't spend our time doing that.
Right.
Charles says, what upcoming game of Stonemaier games is Alan most excited about? But you can't say any names here.
Yeah, I'm the codename Sand, right?
Codename Sand? Yeah.
One? Yeah. Codename Sand is the one that and that's the one Jamie was referring to before as something that I really pushed for because I thought it was a really good idea and product, and I think we're both a little nervous to see how it goes, just because it's different than our normal thing. So my reputation is on the line.
Bookmark this video for that release. Ian says, what are each of our favorite games right now? And we'll answer maybe non-Stonemaier games. Yeah. Do you have a game that you've been excited to play lately?
Well, I really want to play Trading on the Tigris again. I got to play it once at Geekway and really enjoyed that. And we played Feast for Odin as well. I want to play that again. I've played a couple times. It's such an investment to get into.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Those are great games. I'm trying to think for me, what's riveted the actually Just One. I've really enjoyed Just One recently. Have you played Just One
I
yet?
haven't. That's the one that won the Spiel, right?
The Spiel, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been like a cooperative party game. I would not have been one that I thought would have jumped to the top of my list, but I'm always happy to play that.
I do need to play it then, because those are not ones that I get excited about.
Yeah, I'll bring it to Game Night sometime.
Okay.
Rob says, Alan, what's your most played game outside of a Stonemaier game?
It would have to Agricola.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah.
That was how I think that was how we originally connected over games. Either Settlers or Catan.
Yeah, we started
Agricola.
with Settlers, Puerto Rico, and then kind of hit Agricola, and we're playing that a bunch. And then there's a lot of that influence in viticulture, and
There is.
So
yeah,
for sure. For me, that's the one I've played the most.
Yeah.
And we'll still play anytime anybody wants to.
Right. Anthony says, are you guys looking forward to any of the Gencon releases? I've talked about that a little bit. There's one that came out that was mentioned the other day called Mental Blocks that I thought looked really, really cool. It's a cooperative game where you're putting like blocks on a structure, but and fully cooperative, but you only have information about what your side should end up looking like.
Oh.
And so you're working on it, but you're trying to communicate that. I don't exactly know how it works, but I thought that was kind of a cool concept.
Yeah, that's neat.
Chunta says, the other owner of the company shows up. So rare. Where did you go?
Where did I go? I go to my house. I don't know. It is rare. I don't like to be on camera. I'm not very photogenic.
Charles says to Alan, has there ever been a game submission that you rejected that eventually got published by someone else and made you regret rejecting it?
I worry about that every time I see a submission.
Yeah.
Every single time I think about that. It hasn't happened to my knowledge yet. It may have, and I just don't know.
Yeah.
But
there's one.
Is there one?
Yeah, there's. Okay. Have you played Anachrony?
No, I don't think so.
Anachrony, I don't know if I necessarily regret publishing it because I think the publishing company did a great job with it. Yeah. But it was a game submitted to us where the main mechanism is that you could send resources to yourself from the future. And then when you get to the future, you have to actually have those resources to have sent them back to yourself, where you create a paradox.
I like that
really cool
idea
mechanism.
A lot.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, I'll have to go back and look at the submission. That's interesting.
Hernani says, how many submissions do you get a month, and how long do you take to review them before showing Jamie?
We probably get 10 to 15 a month. I take probably 30 minutes on each one. I'll spend time. Usually I'll have somebody send me a video. I'll read through the instructions and just see, kind of go through our checklist of what we want in a game. And then, probably 30 minutes. And then before I bring it to Jamie, I have to actually know the game. So I'll spend a couple hours reading the rules and getting that down, depending on the game. Some don't take that long. But if a game reaches the table here, then it's probably got at least a good 2 hours of me spending time figuring it out.
Right. Jeff says the playtime question, how firm is that, and what if the length is flexible? He's thinking about submitting a tile-based racing game that can scale dramatically in length. I think is like on the short side, I'm okay with it. If it stretches over 2 hours, then it's that's a bit more of a challenge, I would say. Jeremiah says, Jamie, how nervous are you that Alan will accidentally say something that you don't want revealed? A little nervous.
I would have to know something. I don't know enough of that, so I know enough of what not to say.
Right.
Yeah.
Chad says, and we're near the end of the questions here because we got to go in a few minutes. But thank you all for asking the questions. This has been fun to have Alan here. Chad says, how did you two meet? Who tends to win more games? I think we met over Catan through our
mutual
Alan's
friends.
wife and another wife were in Teach for America.
Yeah.
So I think they connected over that, and we played. I think it was probably over games.
Yeah, I'm sure. And then, or a party and then games or something. But
who tends to win more?
I think if we're playing one of Jamie's designs, I tend to win more because Jamie is thinking more about the overall process of the game and what he wants to do, and he's not playing the game as much as he's designing the game in mid-play.
Yeah.
If we're
Wingspan.
playing,
You had a record with Wingspan. I didn't win a game. I don't know if I've ever won a game with
you did
Wingspan.
win
I did
finally,
eventually?
yeah,
Okay.
and that started my losing streak. I won every playtest of Wingspan for a really long time. And then, like, if we're playing any other game that Jamie has nothing to do with as far as design, then he'll probably beat me. I would say most of the time.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
I still like to experiment. I'm always a little bit in that design mode.
Yeah. You take risks, but a lot of times those work out pretty well.
Yeah.
I remember Terra Mystica, maybe the second time I played, and you were the Chaos Magician. You had played it more than I had, but you just destroyed everybody.
I like the Chaos Magicians. Okay, a few more quick questions here. John says, what do you guys feel about going overseas to countries like Singapore, Taiwan, Malaysia, Japan for board game conventions?
We don't like to go to board game conventions in the U.S. Maybe that's one of those things I shouldn't have revealed. I don't know, but
I think they know that we're not at Gen Con right now, as you can tell.
That's
We could easily be there. It's 4 hours away.
Yeah. So it's not our thing. So going to another country to do that is pretty intimidating, I think, just from a energy standpoint.
Yeah.
Essen would be fun. Maybe, I don't know, just to see it. But
yeah,
man, I don't know. That sounds daunting.
Yeah. I'll echo that. I think that maybe the one exception for me would be if it was part of a vacation, like it not really feel like a work thing, but if I'm popping in at a convention to play games for a day, that might be fun. Kenny says, do you just get the rule set submitted to test and you build the theme, or do they come as a complete package from the designer? Usually it's both. Yeah.
Everything should be a complete package.
Yeah.
The only thing that we would add to a game after we sign them to publish it, then we would start developing the game.
Yeah.
But we need a complete package to do anything. I mean, it doesn't have to be, it can be a prototype, but it could be, stuff you cut out of paper or whatever. That doesn't matter. It's more about the actual gameplay. But
yeah. All right. Looks like we reached the end here. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Alan, for dropping by. And I will see you next Wednesday for our big announcement.
I'll be back in 3 years.
Take care. Bye.